This is your host Yannick Oho Bambe, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am more than the immigrant you had in mind. This is a platform on which stories that explore the identity and experiences of immigrants and refugees coming to Canada will be told on a regular basis. In the studio today, I will be co-hosting this show. I had the greatest honor and privilege to co-host with another brother from another mother. His name is Parker, and we'll be chopping it up today in the studio and talking about his journey, talking about my journey. It's going to be a little bit different than what you have been used to so far. So all I can say is that you guys are in for another ride, and we will be talking to you guys at the end, and to see, maybe not talking to you, but actually, hopefully, we will give you an invitation to give your takeaways on this conversation, which I'm really looking forward to. So, welcome to the show, Parker. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me, and I was really excited for today.
Awesome.
Really excited for today, and all of the work that you're doing is amazing, and I have some episodes to catch up on. So you've been filming consistently for quite a while, so yeah, it's nice to jump in now and also ask you some questions. So
awesome. I mean, it'll be my pleasure to answer those questions. So we can just go right into it, bro. Let's just let me. I mean, I'm here, and I'm ready to talk to you. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, can I get a little bit about you?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Yannick Oho Bambe, and what can I say about me? I am an immigrant to Canada. I've moved from the UK to BC, I would say roughly about a year ago. I've been here for a year. I describe myself as an hybrid, as a cultural hybrid. What I mean by that is that I've had the privilege to live in different places throughout my life. So my journey started in the motherland, in a place called Cameroon, which is really the center of Africa. That's where I was born. I stayed in Cameroon all the way up to the age of about 13 to 14. Then I moved to France, where I have quite a lot of family. I mean, just to give you a little background, Cameroon is a predominantly French-speaking country, right? It has two sides, one English and one French. But my family came from the French side, so I would definitely say that my mother tongue is French. So that's why the family, most of the family, most Cameroonian, there's like a big Cameroonian community in France, right? So basically I moved to France at around the age of 14. Stayed in France until right about when I finished my high school, and then at that point I was about 17, 18. One thing that I can say about myself is that I'm very adventurous, and at that point there was a conversation that I started having with my parents, with my dad in particular. And something that I have to say also is that although we live in Cameroon, I think we were quite exposed to Western culture and American culture in particular, and I was always attracted by somehow, because obviously as a teenager, I was. I would definitely say that I'm a child of the 90s era, Michael Jordan's, the Bulls, and that influence, and also the hip hop generation from the 90s. So that influence actually led me to kind of feel a pull toward the US, and I kind of like convinced my dad to let me go on a sort of like sabbatical. Yeah.
I've never heard of someone going on a sabbatical in the United States.
Yeah, well, I guess there you have it, right?
What a wild place for a sabbatical.
And so that's how I kind of ended up in Georgia, in Atlanta, and so so Atlanta was has a very big place in my heart, because that's where I actually tied the knot with my wife. So Atlanta has a very very, very special place in my heart, because that's when my journey of manhood started, because that's where I got married. That's where I started, doing small jobs because I was a student. So it really started doing life, right? Doing life, so to speak. But at the same time, it was also a place where I did not feel like I fitted completely, because of the, I would say, the consequences of the segregation in the US, which means that coming from France, which was a place that was, or actually the city where I was in France was like a melting pot, right? A cultural melting pot. There was cultures were kind of like interacting with each other and things like that. So I came to Atlanta, and the first cultural shock that I had there was that it was quite segregated. It was almost like, every community was, kind of like within itself, right? You didn't have silos. Yeah, you didn't have any mix and stuff like that. So that was like quite a shock, and I must admit that this was one of the first reason why I kind of like started thinking about started thinking about moving, and started thinking about exploring other places. And so I started expressing those feelings to my wife, and then she said to me, I have a couple of my brothers are actually living in the UK, and so, well, since you thinking about exploring your horizons and maybe moving out of Atlanta, why don't you just come and check the UK out? And so she said to me, okay, so let's try. Just come to the UK and visit it, and then see how you like it, and then if you like it, then and you just make up your mind by yourself. And then so that's what I did, and then 20 years later, I was still there.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And I spent 20 years there, and I had and we had our daughters there, both of our daughters. They weren't born exactly in the UK, but they were born in Paris, because obviously the French connection, because my wife also has like connections in France. So we stayed 20 years in the UK, in London, and then from there we came to visit BC in 2023. Because I have a cousin who lives in Vancouver, and she had always told me or told us or asked us to come and visit her and come and check the place out. We came as a family, and we kind of like, as soon as we arrived in BC, we immediately fell in love with the place, right? And we saw ourselves moving here as a family and living here as a family. And so now the question became, how do you make that happen? Because obviously it's one thing to come on holidays and to see yourself, but then there's also the practicality of things and the paperwork and all of that. And then we started actually talking to a friend of my cousin who is an immigration consultant. And at the time she was like, okay, I appreciate the fact that you guys want to travel to Canada, but I have to say to you, I'm just going to be honest and realistic, right? I have to say to you, post-COVID, because that was 2023, right? She was saying post-COVID, there's like a huge delay in responding, right? The application. So you can put in your application, but I'm just saying the delay is about like 2 years delay before you get before you can hope hearing from these guys, right? So we said, okay, well, I mean, we're just gonna give it a try, and and guess what? We gave it a try, and so that was 2023. In about 6 months, we kind of like got approved for permanent resident, and
Whoa.
Yeah, so that was like a pretty quick turnaround. It was a pretty quick turnaround. So I mean, looking back, I've always said that looking back and diving deeper into our story and even how things happen and how I ended up here right now in this moment. I always think that the Canadian move was kind of like meant to be. Just
that's magical. And I'm just thinking about it as for the listeners, the backdrop right now is we're in an office space, but the big windows. He's got the condos and the kind of Pacific Northwest clouds going. It was raining earlier. It's fresh. We live in a rainforest, and it's so amazing to be so close to nature. It's rugged, and just the way that you describe moving here and the lack of resistance, that's when we're on the right path.
Yeah.
6 months is absurd post-COVID.
It is.
To be able to move here, and I'm really glad it worked out.
Yeah.
You said so many things, man, and I just want to rewind a little bit to France. I spent some time in Paris, and I remember using my Canadian passport, and I was going to a club, and the bouncer was like, before he even said anything else to me, he's like, American, and I'm like, Canadian. He's like, prove it. And I gave him my passport, and he looked at it. He was like, "It's the same thing, man. Get in there, American." It's funny that you say that you spent time in Atlanta because I'm born in Savannah, Georgia.
Okay.
So I'm an adoptee from Savannah, Georgia, and I grew up on the island.
Okay.
So I know this place well. I have family here. I've got another adopted brother from Thomasville, Georgia. So Savannah's on the coast. Thomasville is more inland. But I will say, anytime that I cross the border and go to the States, despite its chaos politically and all of those other things, there's a DNA level awakening or understanding. I don't know how else to describe it. It just feels like, it's kind of like when a transformer changes from its regular car to what it's supposed to be, turn into Optimus Prime. Just, there's this moment of like, there it is. It's really fascinating.
Okay.
Now, I like to say, though, this part of the world, BC, is always great to come back to. Nothing much changes here. Like, at least in the city that we're in now, maybe you'll get a few more bike lanes. Maybe the bridge, we had a new bridge that went in, that was a huge thing. Not much changes. So that kind of consistency is really good for the nervous system. But it's so great to get off the island or, out of BC because it does feel like a bit of a bubble. How many times have you driven around and you're just kind of lost? You're just looking around like, is this real? Like, this has got to be a simulation. Absolutely. It's gorgeous.
Absolutely. No.
It's such a beautiful place.
Well, what brings to mind as you are talking about something that I struggle, not that I struggle, but something that I reflect upon a lot all the time. When I'm thinking about home, like what home means to me, right?
Right.
And so I want to ask you the question: what does home mean to you? Can you, because you were talking about feeling like BC is like a bubble, it's like surreal, but at the same time, Georgia is your home type of thing. Well, it's almost like you have. if you were to take the analogy of like the motherland, it's almost like, without going too far away, because obviously there's only one motherland.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. There's levels to it.
Yes,
There's
levels, right,
yeah.
right. So yeah, I'm curious to know your definition of home. What does home mean to you?
In some ways, I don't know yet. And I think that piece has to do with being an adoptee. Because in my case, my adoption was closed. So I didn't have access to the information about my biological family until I was like 19. Okay. And even then, when you open up the case, for anybody who's an adoptee or knows the difference between an open and a closed adoption, that closed adoption means those documents, there's no information on it. It's all blanked out.
Okay.
You're not supposed to know.
Okay.
And so when I did crack those open, I was able to get on one of the documents a name. They forgot to blank one out.
Oh, okay.
So that kind of started this journey that is still going on, by the way. But that kind of opened up this journey, knowing that, okay, there's a whole biological piece to whatever my story is. That piece holds a lot of answers for me that could probably fill in the blanks of why I respond to certain things a certain way. Like there's a cloth that we all have, and that one has some spots that I need to fill. And so in that way, as an adoptee, I don't really know what home feels like, because I've had to kind of make it. And so I've made it through, the beautiful friends and family that I do have, and chosen family. I think that's really important to acknowledge. For me, home is where I can let my shoulders down, where I don't have any armor on. That is where home is. And for me, being an adoptee, if I go around to different places, if I can establish that kind of feeling, then I can feel at home. But I think for me, anytime that I do cross the border, I recognize that as home. Like, this is where I started. But the other layer to that is being of African descent, African American descent, that history. There's another piece. You talk about the motherland.
Absolutely.
There's a whole other situation.
Absolutely.
There's a reason I gravitate towards this type of jollof rice. I'm not going to start the debate, but I'm not going to start the debate. But there's a lot to my story that I haven't uncovered yet, which I find is quite exciting. So I don't know how to answer that yet. Do you know how to answer that?
Well, home to me is synonymous with, I would say, certain colors, with certain noises as well. I don't know if you see where I'm going with that.
I know where you're going.
Smells as well. I mean, you're talking about food, jollof rice, and I always joke with my wife. There is it's not even African dish, but it's something that's it's like, I don't know if you heard about them. It's fried. They call fried plantain.
Of course,
come on. So I always joke with my wife, and I say to my wife that wherever I go, I mean, the indicators for me about if this is a place where I can stay or not is whether they are fried plantains and and the second thing is a barber, right? Because I have to get my hair tight, and so I gotta So. You
rolled the dice coming to DC, brother. You rolled the dice. Oh my goodness.
Well, I have to say that I found a barber actually not too far from where I live in Vancouver. Actually, I mean, well, these guys are they're pretty good. They're pretty good. It's not the top level barber shop, but they can buy.
Hold on tight. Yeah, hold on tight to that barber.
No, but so that's what I was saying. So I think home is really synonymous with certain things that actually make me, or when I have those things, it's like I can find my way around. I can find, and I hear you when you say there's a notion of security, of comfort. So so I think in that way we sort of are on the same page.
Can I ask you a quick question about the kids shifting in Vancouver in terms of like the kids establishing their own comfort, because you're now witnessing that. Do they call the UK home or France home, or do they call this home, this place?
Well, I've got two kids. I've got one older one who is 15 now, and sister is 11 and half, going to 12. So I would say for my 15-year-old girl, it took more adjustment for her, because obviously as a teenager, she had already started making some friends in the UK, and all that she knew was London, right? And coming from London to BC, which is, it feels like coming from a big city to BC. It feels like it almost feels like a countryside type of thing, right? Like a big countryside, right?
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's so true. It's so true. Yeah.
And so for her, it took a little bit more of adjusting, but I believe that with time, looking back a year on into this journey, I think she's starting to feel more at home, because obviously she has had a chance to also have some activities, like extracurricular activities and things like that. So for her, it took more a little bit more of an adjustment, right? For her sister, it was a little bit different because she's younger, obviously. For her also, it's about comfort as well, in a sense, because and I remember that we moved we moved from one place to another in September, and I remember that the first few days when we moved, she was kind of like feeling a bit lost in the new place, because she couldn't find a comfort, right? And I saw her kind of feeling a little bit lost for a moment, right? But then I had to say, it's okay, just we're just moving in, we're kind of settling in, and then as we kind of like settled in, she felt more and more comfortable. So I think it depends on the age range, but typically the younger, that's my observation. In any case, the younger you are in kind of like moving into different, the more flexible you are, and the older you get, it's a bit more tricky, right?
Absolutely.
To find to call a place home. But also to that point of home, for me, as I was saying in the beginning, even when I describe myself, like I said, I've learned how to take the best of all of the different worlds I've gravitated toward the years.
Bring it with you?
Bring it with me, yeah. So you wouldn't be surprised. And even I have that conversation with my girls all the time, right? Because in one conversation, I can go from, or my intonation, right, could go from African to French to American to UK. So it's like, even in my accent, right, it can go from. So I often say that I kind of like bring everything with me, all of my cultural heritage with me wherever I go, right? And that even from a person who has not had any interaction with me, it is to the point that by my accent and or my accents, I would say, I should be able to give them an indication of my life story.
Right.
That's the perspective that I have today, right?
Yeah.
So I bring it with me, and I've learned how to actually be, take it as a strength, like, and use this uniqueness, this difference as as I would say, even a superpower.
It is, and language shapes the way that we view the world.
Mm-hmm.
I fully believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And in your case, you talk about your journeys. I think another piece that's special about the places that you've been is the opportunity to get foundational knowledge from each place, especially from where you're starting in Cameroon. And I wonder if there are any teachings that have influenced your decision making throughout your life. Like, is there something that from Cameroon has just stuck with you? Like, this is a life motto. This is where this is how it influences my decisions on some level.
Well, your question makes me think about makes me think about my dad, my late dad, and actually what he taught, or the lessons that he actually taught us, whether it was conscious or unconscious. But I'm thinking about the adventurous side of me, right? That I mentioned in the beginning. I'm thinking about also the instinctiveness. I'm thinking about thinking big, right? The dreaming, because I also have like a dreamer part in me, which is like, we are bigger than anything that we can imagine, right?
Yeah.
So those kind of things, and so that's what I kind of like, take from Cameroon, from my childhood with my dad, and also take a set of values, values that are very strong in the, I would say, traditional African society, like solidarity, it's all about sharing. It's all about. You also have like values like honesty, integrity. Really be people of character, right? And in fact, when you look at, maybe not now, not so much now, but when you look at ancient, African traditions and kingdoms and things like that, you see things like, they were societies that were really big on values, like human values, like respect for elders, respect for each other. There was a set of values that I've kind of like carried from there, and that I'm trying to also pass on to the next generation, to my girls. But really, it's really about. I think it comes down to being aware that the name that you carry has weight and responsibility. It's almost like
it's legacy work.
Absolutely, that's where I was going with that. And because it's legacy work, there are certain things that you cannot do.
Respect the name.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that is something that I carry to this day, and yeah.
It's, man, I love the power of names, and at the top you say my name is Parker Johnson, but my first name, Parker, apparently means protector of the forest. And I'm just putting two and two together. Recently, we moved from the city into, we now live in the woods. And I'm like, are we in control? You know what I mean? Like, who's pulling the strings? Because I'm living in the woods. I keep beads. I'm a hermit. My friends call me a hermit. I don't come outside, man. I just, yeah, man. Okay. I just chop wood, keep bees, and just mind my business. Okay. But it's interesting when I think about my name and the power of our name and how that may influence our decisions or who we are. I think that's quite special.
No, absolutely. And to me, it's there's two thoughts that I have, because it's almost like, I don't know if this is something that is caught or taught, this sort of like being aware of the power of your name, because you wonder why. I mean, because if it's not taught, because I don't remember any I mean, as a first observation, I don't remember any time where somebody in my family or my dad or my mom told me, okay, you have to respect your name. But it's almost like, because my dad was such a great leader by example, right? So it's almost like I caught it from him, right? But where I was going with that is that you wonder if it's taught. Why don't you have many people around who actually think this way, and because especially when you look at the world today, and when you look at even going back to maybe the younger generations, right?
Yeah.
How some of them go into certain things, certain behaviors, and like self-sabotaging behavior and stuff like that. I mean, I'm thinking that if people were able to get an awareness of the power of their names and what their name carries, maybe they would just not be prone to behaving in certain ways, right? So that's why I was just wondering if this is something that is like taught or caught. But for me personally, I think I just caught it by looking at my late father, kind of like leading by example and showing us that, and
I mean, you inherit a value system, and I think if you are blessed enough to have a strong community and people around you, mentors, family, people will reflect your value and really almost embolden your identity or give you the opportunity for your identity to express itself. And previously you talked about being in Atlanta and how there's that segregation piece, and I know in certain parts of France there's still that historical kind of separation, but I do think that does a number on maybe our like self-worth, sense of identity, and we also lose the opportunity to hear each other's stories, which is why I think the podcast like this is really important, because your story is so crucial, and it just seems like we're getting further and further away from being able to share our stories with each other. Do you feel the same?
No, absolutely. I think we live in a world where, well, first of all, the attention span of people is very reduced. People don't take the time to listen and to just pause and reflect. I think we just live in a society where it's like go, and we're always on the go, right? And when we are in this kind of movement, right? It's very difficult to hear the other, and what ends up happening is that we end up talking at each other, or instead of talking to each other. And so unfortunately that's the world that we are living in right now, and you're quite right. I mean, this kind of platform, well, the idea, I mean, it started as an idea from Brother Q, who was and he told me, he shared with me that it was from a book that he read, and in the book, the title in that book was I am more than the Indian. It was from the First Nations, and he said, I'm more than the Indian that you had in mind. And that's where the title came. And the title of this podcast is I am more than the immigrant that you had in mind, right? So I think there's a need for platforms such as this, where we kind of deconstruct the stereotypes that people might have of others when they see them, right?
Especially here, for the newcomers, it's hard. It's hard to you talk about bringing your knowledge with you, your culture with you, and when you jump into a society that is so productivity focused,
if
you don't fit into the machine right away, we love to categorize people. You get placed a certain place. You start to experience more barriers than others, and I think that's such a shame.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I mean, talk to me about. I mean, you obviously have your story is quite unique, right? Because you are an immigrant without being an immigrant, right? Because you are adoptee, right?
The adoptee piece.
Right, the adoptee piece. So talk to me about the reception and or the perception or people's perception of you. I mean, what's the general perception that people have, that you're just an American, or that, so when on first contact, first encounter,
I remember it very, very clearly. Getting dropped off at school. I was the only black kid in class. All the kids surrounded me. Those of you who know me probably have heard this story before. All the kids surrounded me and started grabbing me, touching my hair because I had, curly hair. They were looking at my palms. One girl bit me and asked if I would bleed blue or tasted like chocolate. Another person was touching I was just doing like a rotation.
Wow.
And the teacher had to intervene, like, hey, don't do that. So I learned pretty quickly about difference. And
how old were you?
5. It was kindergarten.
That's tough, because at 5 years old, bro, that's like in itself a traumatic experience.
I mean, I've never used the word traumatic to pair it with that experience, but hearing that back, maybe. I mean, I do a lot of work with younger adoptees now. I mentor them. And I hear a lot of those stories. It doesn't stop, especially in this part of the world. And I work with teachers around, racism, discrimination in schools. There's something really deep and embedded here. And the way that a black body is treated here is it can be quite intense. So anyways, that was the first kind of initiation into discrimination and microaggressions and that. And I knew something was up. And things just began escalating with each year. There'd be fights. There'd be, I'm getting singled out in class. There'd be moments where I'm not knowing really what's happening, and I don't have the language to describe why, but it's impacting me emotionally and psychologically. So I might withdraw, or I'm a very extroverted person, so there was a lot of conflict there. But I recognized pretty early on, okay, not only am I not seeing myself reflected a lot, I'm also experiencing these pretty significant things. What is going on? So when I was able to establish my community and find, my people, it definitely improved my life. Like, we need community so badly. So that was my first early experience of being an adoptee.
Okay.
Oh, and I just want to add, actually, there's another layer that I think is important that comes up for me. Being from the States, growing up in Canada, there's another layer to it of trying to reckon with the land, understanding whose land we're on. That is another piece, because growing up in this education system,
absolutely.
They pulled a number on us, let's say. And so there's another layer of what is my historical connection to the land, what is my understanding of this land, and what is my responsibility to it. And that responsibility piece, I think, will be lifelong as long as I'm here. So I just wanted to add that piece.
No, absolutely. And what conclusion have you drawn so far as this additional piece about the land?
The conclusion that I've drawn, I feel a lot of sadness and grief for the many, many missed opportunities to learn more about the indigenous cultures that have truly stewarded the land for so long. If you could imagine a world where those teachings, those oral teachings, were embedded in the public school system, what would our communities look like and sound like?
No, absolutely.
Would that kindergarten experience happen to me? No.
Absolutely.
So it's fascinating to think about those alternative worlds where that was a thing. So I guess for me, I'm just, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
And I know things are changing, but just in my own life, reflecting on that.
Sure. No, that's interesting. And have you have you been in contact? Have you ever had the chance to be in contact with First Nations communities?
Absolutely.
Just to learn from them. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A lot of it in my work in community organizing and learning Indigenous cultural safety, and then facilitating that, supporting that facilitation.
Okay.
So I've had the opportunity to seek that out and kind of welcome that into my life, but it really feels like I'm just scratching the surface.
No,
and so
absolutely.
as I'm trying to understand this piece, I'm also learning about myself as an adoptee in this black body.
Yeah.
So there's just so many layers, man.
Yeah,
I think when I am 85, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be tired, bro.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a pretty worthwhile, endeavor. It's because I see, to me, I think life is about education, and I feel like we have to be students, student of life, students, and people who are perpetually learning, right?
Yeah.
Like it has to be like a perpetual learning experience, life, right? So to those who kind of like limit themselves to just one type of experience, I mean, I kind of like feel sorry for them,
I know, yeah.
I wanted to go someplace and to ask you one of your experience, or any of the experience that you deem as traumatic, right? Talking about microaggression and and all of that. I mean, if you had an opportunity to, like, because I believe that like this word is in sort of how can I put it? I think ignorance is almost like has become like a sort of like a cancer in our society, and it's not only a cancer, but it's infectious, right? It's infectious, but I think ignorance is becoming an infectious cancer, right? So I guess where I'm going with that is that if you were to have a conversation with one person or a group of people who, kind of like came to you and say, okay, we feel sorry, we genuinely, right? And they say, yeah, we feel sorry for the way we kind of treated you and things like that. And what would it take for us to make amends or to make you feel like, you belong here? What would your response be to that?
Well, I think in any form of repair and building, in any form of repair, that accountability piece is important. I've had these conversations. I've had these hard conversations. And I think what I've learned from me is there needs to be a willingness to want to create a relationship. That's my prerogative. If I want to, if some harm has been done to us, we fully have the choice of whether or not we want to continue a relationship with the person. And I think that it's a vulnerable thing to experience harm, and it's a vulnerable thing to admit that you're perpetuating it or doing it. So for me, I think, although it's a hard thing to do, I do think there's value in seeking out relationship with people who are willing to learn. Because ignorance, like you said, it's so infectious, but now we have supercomputers at the palms of our hand, so it's almost like a choice. So if you're choosing to tap in to someone else's worldview and take your lenses off, so to speak, you know, the people who have never been to this place or to that place, you still can view the world through this cell phone or computer or whatever. We have Google now.
Sure.
So if you were willing to take off the lenses and put on a different pair, that also disarms me in a way, where I'm willing to just sit and have a conversation. So I'm always willing to have that conversation if that's the energy that I'm being met with. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're right on point, and I totally share this point about there has to be a willingness, right, to learn and to go further than just, you know, an apology, and you know, so because this is the question that I always ask myself, and I ask myself when I think about community building, race relations, and just building a society where different cultures can not only coexist but begin to respect each other. One question that I've always been asking myself is, what does it take to trigger that process, you know, where you know, you where we can actually begin to see eye to eye, where maybe before maybe, I don't know, sometimes I feel like maybe I'm just a utopian. Maybe it's just utopia, right? That maybe, you know, we never reach that place. But I've always wondered, you know, and this is a question that I not struggle with, but that I ask myself a lot. What does it take?
Let me ask you then, to follow up. When you think about Cameroon, and you think about UK, and you think about being here, did you know your neighbors in all of those places?
To a certain extent, yes.
You know, did you?
To a certain extent,
yeah.
To a certain extent, I would say more in Cameroon, because it's a like close and knit community, and you know, and in fact, some of my, you know, I've 30 years friendships that were based on just being neighbors, right? We were neighbors, and now, you know, it become, So, so definitely, but then I would add a layer to that is, and in all of the different places where I've been, whether it's France, the UK, the US, or here, I've also been able to know my neighbors, but that wasn't because it was like a cultural thing, but it was more like an attitude. Because, and sometimes I talk to my wife, and she's like, you know, because you kind of like a pretty easygoing guy, and people feel like you're approachable. And sometimes I think that sometimes also it has to do with that, you know, if you are closed up, and, you know, you kind of give that vibe to people that, you know, you just don't want to. They just feel like they're just not gonna mess with you, right? So I think there has to. So there are layers, and there are layers to that as well. You know,
don't let the rain close you up here, brother, please, because that's also infectious. There are days where I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm wet, I'm cold. It gets in your bones. But you got to be able to remain open. I agree. I agree, man. Where did you want to take it from here?
Well, typically I go into the section about you know, words of wisdom, and you know, we just kind of ask you to give me some thoughts, you know, final thoughts about anything, really, just some words of wisdom that you want to leave us with. And
am I going first?
Yeah, you can go on first. Yes.
I think something that I'm holding on to, because I'm needing it, as we live in this, we are hyper connected and hyper vigilant, in my opinion. We're exposed to so much stress, vicarious trauma, and I think those things they impact me. I'm an emotional sponge, so I always try and remind myself to be patient and give myself grace for any difficult emotions that come up. Moments of freeze, moments of flight, moments of fight. I'm having a very human experience, and so I need to give myself the grace to understand that and know that I'm not going to get it right all the time. I'm not meant to be super productive all the time. That's not natural. So I guess for anybody who is listening, and another reminder for myself, is just that permission to give yourself grace and be patient with the human experience, the things that are happening and coming up for you. You're supposed to feel the way that you're feeling. We're wired for it. And right now it might feel like tensions are high or there might be overwhelm. Give yourself grace. I'll leave it there.
Bro, on that note, I mean, I don't think there's much to say. I think you said it all. I mean, you want to end up with grace. I mean, maybe we can say a little prayer, maybe. Yeah. Because you talked about grace, right?
I don't have a prayer in the pocket today, man. I don't.
It was a truly special moment with the bro. I mean, you figured it out. I mean, the chemistry is there. I mean, he's my bro. We hit it off. I mean, the first time we started chatting, and here we are co-hosting. And I hope you guys took something away from this conversation, some nuggets here and there. As it's always our intention to kind of like leave you with something to ponder and some food for thought. So thank you very much for being here, brother Parker.
I'm grateful, man. Thank you.
And until next time, yes, we are out. Thank you. So tune in for more in the next episodes of this podcast series, produced by the Intercultural Association of Greater Victoria, with funding from the Department of Canadian Heritage.